welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 3, Episode 20, Improbable Cause. Before we continue, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we're awesome, and we want to do more things with people who are listening. So, um, yeah, give us a shout. Let us know what you think of our show, and we'll just keep going from there. Um, but yeah, David, as we always say every week before we get into the actual episode and other things, how are you doing this week?
Doing all right, doing all right. My poor roommate has been sick for like the last 2 weeks, and he went in on Tuesday to find out what's going on, and they tested him for COVID, and apparently he has it. I don't know if he got it from me. I mean, it's several weeks after I'd had it. He thinks I gave it to him, which is not unreasonable, but he also wasn't in town when I had it, so I'm not exactly sure what was going on. That's been unfortunate. He's still coming through that. Finished rewatching season 3 of The Expanse. So finished book 3, watched the rest of season 3. They make a lot of changes from the book to the show, but again, it's always in the like the overarching plot is the same, but the details
Mhm.
about how things happen is very different. So, for example, just real quickly, the character Ashford in the show is very different than he is in the book. And the character Drummer from the show is not even in the book. She's kind of an amalgamation of some other characters. But
I've heard
I
that.
yeah, and yeah, it's the show's great, the book's great. It's more like they kind of needed to streamline a few details because they were actually, season 1 of the show is only the first half of the first book, and then season 2 was the second half of book 1 and the first half of book 2, and season 3 was the second half of book 2, and then all of book 3. So they had to get all of book 3 into 7 episodes as opposed to like a full 10, 12 season arc. But yeah, great, love the show. It was actually at this point, my understanding is, so season 4 was when Amazon picked it up. So next season will be an Amazon produced part of the show. Um, the other thing going on, new video game, Fire Emblem Engage is what I started playing this week. Love the Fire Emblem series. Wasn't sure I was going to like this new one. I mean, I really just started it. So far, it's been fun. I'll be curious to see how it goes. But and then, yeah, I've also been reading Sense and Sensibility, which is the Jane Austen novel, just for something different. Uh, Jack into my feminine side for a little bit. And yeah, it's been fun to read, a classic Jane Austen novel. My mom, was a fan of Jane Austen. I loved watching the BBC 6 episode version of Pride and Prejudice. It's hilarious. If you ever want to watch some Jane Austen, the Keira Knightley version is fine, but the BBC version, the 6 episode version is of Pride and Prejudice is fantastic. Um, yeah, other than that, just living life like normal. How about you?
Yeah, pretty much same old, same old. Working a lot and trying to keep my motivation up for working out, which, you know, I've been, I'm very much aware of the fact that, obviously I'm not 26 anymore and doing a lot of these things. And, the drive to do a lot of it is waning to say the least. And so, I was working out last week as a matter of fact, and I was just so tired and I was trying to push through the workout and everything. And I was just thinking, man, 10, 12 years ago, this would have been nothing. I would have just,
Right.
burned through this workout and then went on to do whatever. And now it's taking so much. And I'm always trying to find ways to, help to maintain the focus and the drive and everything like that, and switching it up so that my routine doesn't get boring and everything else. But I just have to really just accept the fact that I'm older, and that's just there's nothing I can do about that, And there's when you work out, there's always going to be other people around who they want to tell you things and kind of get into your head a little bit and all sort of kind of stuff. And so there's always these questions about what I take, because I'm a very large man. Okay, I've just always been a large man. There's just all there is to it. And so I always get these questions as to what it is I take, like, and I'll tell people, I have, you know, a one a day vitamin that I take, and um, I have a beet supplement that I really like that I take, and I mean that's essentially it. I don't really do anything else. I mean, I have like energy drinks like anybody else would at any time, but nothing else. But
Right.
no one ever wants to believe me. There's always this thought that I'm, taking something else or injecting something or whatever. And where do I get it and who? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not that big.
Right.
Okay, I'm not muscled out, muscles on top of muscles or whatever that is. To in my opinion, that would make you think that I was doing that kind of thing. But I think people
Right.
take my overall size and stature and assume that there must be something extra. No, this is it. This is me. And the strongest thing coursing through my body at any given moment is Advil. So that's
Right.
it. So but
Yeah.
that's always a fun conversation to have, especially when it's like 5:30 in the morning and you're like the last thing you really want to do is talk to anybody and
Yeah.
they're hounding you about what you take. I'm like, nothing, this is me. And I kind of want to thank you because you've annoyed me so much that now I have to burn off this frustration, and so now that's going to get me through the workout. But
Right.
other than that, no, there's nothing else. I don't do any of those things.
Right.
But that was just past week, and other than that, I have been still trying to make my way through the rest of the third novel of The Expanse. I have not gone back to watch the season three yet. I want to finish the book first and
Right.
then go and watch season three.
That's what I did.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so you're a bit ahead, of course, on that I am. But hey, you know
That's
what?
fine.
We're
Yeah.
yeah,
We're not. It's
we're
not a
gonna get
competition.
there. Right. It's not a it's right. It's not a
Yeah.
race. We're not competing.
Yeah. You're the
Um,
one who got me into reading the books because you said you were reading. I was like, I want to do that too. So yeah, you
yeah,
go.
and we still share and share, and for those of you who are interested, again, we have the Fire Cave After Dark where we talk about the books and then other greater sci-fi stuffs and tie-ins and everything else. In fact, I'm really looking forward to where we can get to a point where we can talk about both the Expanse and the reboot Battlestar Galactica, because I do feel like every time that I read it, every time that I watch it, I feel like there are so many parallels of that series and this one, and I really want to get into that a little bit more. But I don't feel like we're quite there yet. Maybe we are. Maybe we can talk about that, and if you feel differently, because I know you've watched the series, you've watched Battlestar Galactica as well. I think you watched it. Did we
Yeah.
watch
When
that
we worked
together?
together.
Yeah, I was going to say we watched it
Well,
together.
I mean, I watched it myself, but you were the one who put me onto it, and we would talk about it at the time. It's not like we were watching episode to episode like we are right now. Like
Right,
that's
right.
not what we
No,
did. But yeah, I watched it, and being like your number one show, I watched that because you suggested it, and
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We'll definitely be talking about it more because I still stand by my original statement I made years ago about how it was the show that ruined me on television for like a year. Like no, like after watching Battlestar when it ended, I couldn't watch anything else because everything was crappy by comparison for like a year. So I was like,
right,
I had to like my brain had to like readjust to television and its mediocrity after
right,
that. So
yeah,
but for right now, we are not here to talk about The Expanse or Battlestar Galactica and their respective greatness. We are here to talk about Improbable Cause. Very
mhm,
interesting episode, the 66th episode in the DS9 series. And this was the 20th episode of the third season.
that's right. Yep,
So, and it's a two-parter. So this is just the first part, of course, but this is the two-parter. And an interesting fact about the two-parter is it does not it's not named, the second part is not named Improbable Cause Part 2. It
that's right,
actually has a different name, but it is a two-parter episode. And I
right,
I almost feel like this is one of those episodes that kind of got them realizing just how powerful of a serialized story they could tell versus kind of those bottled clip versions that Star Trek had been so, famous for the
right,
longest time. So I really
yeah.
feel like this kind of clued them in there. So we're going to get into it. But before we do, of course, we always like to give a quick recap summation of the episode. David, do you want to do it or do you want me to do it?
You should do it this time. I think Odo is very prominent in this episode, so
Yes, he
let's
is.
give it to you.
And
Yeah.
I love Odo. I love Odo. So I will keep this brief, of course, because we have a lot to talk about. So basically, the episode starts with Julian and Garrick having lunch, and Julian is just wolfing down his food, of course, while Garrick is just kind of going on and on about whatever it is he's, blabbering about there. He
Yeah.
makes a comment about the fact that Julian is inhaling his lunch versus enjoying it, and how there seems to be some kind of human disconnect with our eating habits. How all even he notices some other humans in the area have already finished their meals, whereas their alien counterparts are just kind of languishing through the dining experience.
Right.
Um, they begin to part ways, or they do part ways actually, and they're interrupted by Major Kira. She's asking Bashir some questions when all of a sudden there's an explosion that rocks the promenade. Kira and Bashir take off into the direction of the explosion, knowing that it's Garrick's shop. We find Garrick kind of bloodied on the inside, but not dead. And this launches into an investigation, and they realize that someone may be trying to kill Garrick. And
Right.
so, of course, this leads to questioning by both Odo and Cisco, who are really just kind of already at the point of, we don't want any of your nonsense, Garrick. Just tell us what's going on, right?
Right.
Which is really, I love that, because it's just like there's no preamble, there's no ramping up to maybe he's innocent and doesn't know whatever, but 100% no, you're in on this. We know
Right.
already. Um, Garrick, of course, dissembles. He doesn't really tell them anything. Odo decides that he has to begin his own investigation. He begins doing the investigation and discovers evidence that the Romulans are behind the potential assassination
Right.
plot. He's interviewed a couple of other people. There's a Flaxian, a very unusual looking alien, who carries a case around that's got various perfumes in it.
If a catfish ever became a human, this Flaxian is what a humanoid catfish would look like. But yes, keep going.
With various jewels and baubles in its hair. It was
Yeah.
very very interesting design for an alien, I must say.
Yeah.
Like, I was quite distracted by the facial features and the
Me
things in
too.
the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting to look at. So anyway, Odo has basically identified this individual as an assassin, but he knows he's not the assassin that was going to kill Garrick, because Garrick, again, there was an explosion versus the Flaxine, who's got all these various perfumes that, which, when combined in a certain way, would make for a poison.
Right.
So he's like, the Flaxian was going to poison you, not blow you up.
Right.
So they decide to follow the Flaxian to see who the Flaxian leads them back to. They don't get very far in that investigation because the Flaxian ship blows up,
Right.
which now sets even Garrick onto alert. And in the conference room, the ward room, with Dax, Bashir, no, Dax, Odo, Garrick, and
Cisco.
Cisco, they're still trying to piece it together, and Odo pretty much outs Garrick here and saying he honestly doesn't know who's trying to kill him, because he would have been spinning more wild tales, and yet he clearly is kind of shooken here
Right.
with this recent development. Odo then makes contact with a Romulan from the Tal Shiar, and the Romulan tells him that, yeah, they killed the Flaxian because they'd been looking for him for a year, that the assassination of the Flaxian was totally legitimate, and they kind of make their own little inferences about how, oh, you caught up to him just after all this chaos kind of happened here on the station, but that, of course, leads them nowhere. Odo
Right.
makes contact with a former Cardassian informant that he had,
Right.
who tells him that Garrick isn't the only person who almost, or who met with an unfortunate end, or almost did in Garrick's case, and that
Right.
there are 5 other people who were also murdered, or died anyway, but all
Yeah.
under various explainable circumstances.
Right.
Odo shows this list to Garrick, who is elated at first, but then he realizes, you know, a little bit more about who these people are, and relaying that they were all a part of the Obsidian Order, and in particular, they were operatives under the infamous Anabran Tain,
Right.
the leader of the Obsidian Order back in his heyday before he retired.
Right.
Garrick then enters in I guess, a very covert way of sending a message, contacts an elderly Cardassian woman named Mila, who is apparently Tane's old maid and confidant. and she tells him that Tane's not there and that he has also gone missing. He left in a hurry. Um, Odo and Garrick then borrow a runabout to head off to uh, an Auburn Tane's secret base that Garrick wasn't supposed to know about, but apparently does anyway. And as soon as they drop out of warp in the system, a giant Romulan warbird decloaks over them and picks them up.
Right.
And when they're led through the ship, they are led to none other than an Auburn Tane, who has now apparently made friends with the Romulan Tal Shiar.
Right.
Um, he basically says, "Yeah, I'm glad that you found me because that saves me the trouble of having to send someone else to kill you." They do their little bit of sparring back and forth until finally, Garrick reveals that the whole reason that he's out here was to try to save Tane. He thought he was in trouble and could need his help. Tane believes him and decides he's going to let Garrick go, but he's going to keep Odo.
Right.
And then he offers Garrick the chance to join him again, at which point Odo tries to warn him, but Garrick doesn't care, and he now enlists back with Tane, and that's essentially how the episode ends.
That's right.
With Odo is now in custody, and Garrick is now back in the Obsidian Order and back working for Inabra and Tane,
Yeah.
and that's where we're at.
Exciting stuff.
So that's it. That is a quick summation, I would say, for this episode. A lot of other details, of course. We're going to get to all those, and of course, if you want to watch all of it and know the full story, go watch it. You can watch it right now on Paramount Plus and know the whole thing, and then come back and
Yeah.
join us.
Yeah.
But you can't if you're watching us live, unfortunately. But I mean, otherwise, you can do that.
Right.
So, first question, as always, what did you think of this episode?
I like the fact, as you were kind of hinting at as we started up, that this episode has ramifications outside of the regular hustle and bustle of everyday life on Deep Space Nine. Like the last episode, Cisco is taken to the mirror dimension, but none of the events that happen there necessarily have anything to do with even our. Like the only thing that ever happens in our universe is him being captured by the alternate alternate
Alternate,
O'Brien.
yeah.
That's the only thing we see in our universe. So the fact that this is tying in a lot of factions. We got the
Hmm.
Romulans. The Romulans had been working with the Federation on the Defiant. The Defiant had the cloaking technology from the Romulans. The Romulans had information from the Federation about their trip to the Gamma Quadrant at the beginning of this season that went so terribly. They are now working with the Cardassian Obsidian Order, not the lead, the military arm. What's the
Not the Obsidian Order, but
the
just the Cardassian government, the
well, yeah, what's the high something, the high, anyway.
Inquisitor,
No. The military arm of the Cardassians, the ones that
the Central Command.
yeah,
That's
there
what
you
they
go.
were
I'm
called.
sorry, I couldn't
That's what
say
we
it.
ever called them, was the Central Command.
Yeah, I couldn't think of it. But like Auburn Tane is very dismissive of Central Command. He's like, they're gonna have a war on their hands whether they like it or not. Like, we don't care what they have to say about this. We, the Obsidian Order, are taking the initiative. So we have the Federation, we have the Romulans, we have the Cardassians, we have the fact that Odo is a changeling. Tane says to Odo, like, "Hey, it's your people that are in charge of the Dominion. So, got anything to say about that?" And he's tight-lipped about it. So yeah, this episode really sets up a lot of stuff. I mean, the fact that the Cardassians and the Romulans are about to make some sort of kamikaze attack into the Dominion. I mean, if they supposedly have the Federation's information on what happened in the first episode where the Dominion came through, that was like the end of season 2, like the last episode of season 2, where the whatever the enforcement arm of the Dominion is, I forget right now,
The Jem'Hadar.
the Jem'Hadar captures Cisco. And at the end of that episode, we learn not only had they been trying to infiltrate our side of the wormhole, but they already had infiltrated it. They can
Mhm.
overpower, containment fields. They have technology that is powerful. In the very next episode, we have the Federation Galaxy class starship like the Enterprise going
The
across the
Odyssey.
wormhole, and the Odyssey gets blown up. Like, if the Cardassians and the Romulans are going to start taking the fight to the Dominion, either they have technology that is outside the realm of what we've seen before, or they have enough of whatever they think they have that they can just, by force of numbers, try and win something. And
So eh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, because
Uh,
this
uh,
is this is great. What you were
yeah,
saying is great because there's so much I want to tell you right now.
yeah. And then, of course, the biggest thing is that they are making all of these moves without, working with, say, the Federation. The Federation are the ones who have already made, attempts across the wormhole. So maybe we should get the Federation in on this. It's better to have everyone on this side of the wormhole working together than, keep the Federation, out of it. The our dang it, our group, not the Cardassians, the
The
people whose planet,
Romulans.
not no, the people whose planet where Deep Space Nine orbits, um,
Bajor.
Bajor, the
Bajor. The
Bajorans.
Bajorans.
So many names, so many characters to use.
That's
The
why I love it.
Bajorans. Yeah, the Bajorans aren't even involved. Now, of course, a few episodes back, we'll remember that the previous thing that the Romulans attempted was actually blowing up the wormhole. Their thought was like, hey, let's just end the threat, blow up the wormhole. We'll blow up Deep Space Nine as a part of that to cover our tracks. But that failed. So, yeah, my point is there's a lot going on. We have a lot of potential conflicts between a lot of different groups, and it's
Yeah.
fantastic. We have a lot of options for things to really blow up in our faces.
You're absolutely right. And like there are so many things that you just hit on, and there were a couple of holes in there that while your continuity is correct, I'm just gonna fill in a couple of things. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So as you said, as we remembered back in season two, when we first got wind of the Dominion and their potential threat to the Alpha Quadrant, and then of course we see here at the beginning of season three where we get the Defiant, and the Defiant has entered into this partnership with the Romulans, and in order to get an exchange of information. And so we
Uh-huh.
know that those first bit of reports are getting to the Romulans, and Auburn even says so here. Now, one thing that we should not forget also was that the Defiant was stolen by Thomas Riker. Remember in the
Right.
episode Defiant,
That's
and when
right.
Thomas Riker stole the Defiant, he was operating for the Maquis, and they were heading towards a sector of Cardassian space where there was a proliferation of ships and weapons buildup. So he claimed.
Yes.
They had no proof of this, but
Right.
that's what they were claiming. And they were doing all these first strikes because they were convinced that the Cardassians were going to try this massive offensive against the Maquis and wipe them out. And that's why they wanted Defiant to stop them before they could. When they
Right.
arrived in that sector of space, they were met by Cardassian warships that were totally unrecognizable by Gul Dukat and the rest of the Central Command. They didn't know about any of these ships, remember? And
Right.
those ships were also very powerful. They were more
Yes.
powerful and more well armed and better equipped than the ships that Dukat had.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
now,
Yeah.
if you piece it together, we can kind of see this is what the Obsidian Order was doing. They had gotten their information from the Romulan Tal Shiar about the Dominion, and both sides had decided to join up. The Obsidian Order at the Tal Shiar had decided to join forces and create a force of ships in order to go into the Gamma Quadrant and wipe out the Dominion. Now we see that plan coming into fruition here.
Right.
Those same ships that were being built in that episode are now here in place to go and do this strike. So
Right.
that's that bit of the serialization that I feel like they were tapping into here.
Right.
So even for a two-part episode, it really links back to um, other episodes, other things that we know from the development of just watching the show. Again, from the
Yes.
Defiant to the Defiant being stolen, like all those things. We watched the Odyssey blow up. We know that the Dominion is a new threat. We know that that threat scares the Romulans. They tried to blow up the station, which we saw in the episode Visionary with O'Brien and the two O'Briens jumping back and forth through time. All of these things have now led to this. The Tal Shiar tried to destroy the wormhole. They failed. Now here is their second attempt in conjunction with the Obsidian Order, who's been building ships since the beginning of season three.
Right.
for this.
Yep.
So it's all coming together. All the pieces are here for this major offensive. And of course, we're left with the question of one, what's Garrett going to do now that he's joined back up with the Obsidian Order? And
Right.
two, what do they want with Odo? Why was he willing to let Garrett go? He told him where his runabout was and everything, but
Right.
he was going to keep Odo. Why?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the obvious that if Odo is a changeling and the changelings are the leaders of the Dominion, good to have a specimen on hand so we can figure out what kind of things they can do. I mean, the
Yeah,
first question that we would say in proposition to saying, "Hey guys, this might be a bad idea," is it seems that the Dominion is able, because of their changeling infiltrators, they can infiltrate almost any society they want. Um, they can, as we saw in the episode where the changeling woman impersonated Kira, they're able to perfectly imitate people. Where Odo has trouble, she could do it, and convincingly, for the longest time. In fact, she didn't lose Odo's trust because of her failure to produce on a physical level Kira. It was that she said I love you back to Odo when he
mhm,
professed love of her, and he was like, wait a minute, she wouldn't do that. So that's the first thing I would say to like the Obsidian Order and everyone else. Be like, hey guys, there's a very good possibility that they know every move you're about to make. They got you on lock. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if an Obrantane himself isn't a changeling. Like that's how bad it is, or that Mila was, something crazy. If that's the case, or if that's even an option, if it's at all possible that they might have, an inside scoop on what's about to happen, then you're about to walk into a giant ambush, and there's only one way. The wormhole is the only entrance into the gamma quadrant. If you want to attack something, you would hopefully want the ability to to strafe, to
mhm.
capture, to pin, do pincer movement. You want to have multiple angles of attack. You only got one in this case, and if they can in any way stop you from getting back to the wormhole to escape, you're all cut off. They've been this way. On a military level, this is a huge gamble. And an
Yeah,
Auburn says this is he's reintroducing himself into Cardassian society. He doesn't want to go back to
yes,
retirement. Like this is him coming back. And in fact, the reason he sent all those assassins against all those other Cardassians that Garrick recognized was so that he didn't have any rivals. He was
right.
taking out all of his competition in preparation for returning to the Obsidian Order.
And
And
also anybody could have any who could have any potential leverage over him. He was trying to get rid of them.
exactly,
He didn't want
exactly,
anybody coming up and being like kind of like what Garrick was doing, which was, saying, "Hey, I want to be back. I want to be back too." He
you're right,
was getting rid of all of those people.
right,
So he wanted to come back to the Obsidian Order, back to Cardassian society in a really big and powerful way.
right,
And this was how he was going to do it. He was the hero, the liberator, the destroyer of the doom that they didn't know was coming.
right.
And that was going to be his big thing here. So yeah, he's definitely got a lot of ambition in this bold strike to get back into Cardassian society. And it's
Right.
interesting that he's partnered up with our pointy-eared friends, as Garrett calls them at one point.
Yeah, which is a great moment. We can talk about that. An Auburn turns to Odo and deftly breaks down that insult. He wants me to either defend them, which makes it still awkward for us, or he wants me to leave the insults up and place doubt between. Like either option he gives me in response to him is a bad option. So the better option is to break it down for Odo and for us, the audience, and basically refuse to answer Garrick's insult.
Right.
Um,
Refusal to play his game, but
yeah,
exposing it all the same.
exactly. Yeah, in Auburn, we got to say this: we've met in Auburn before, but
Hmm.
on the second time we meet him, he's already a fascinating character. He
Yes.
can he can put Garrick in his place. Garrick is seemingly worshipful of this guy. He wants to save his life. There's been insinuation that in that episode we first met an Auburn might even be his father. I mean, at the very least, I mean, Garrick dissembles at first and says he was an advisor, and then Odo
Mhm.
says, "No, you were his protege.
Yeah.
You were like his number one tutor or tutor. Anyway, student
2T, is that it?
2T.
You were he was your mentor, you were his
Yes,
mentee. There was
exactly.
definitely he's right, Odo does, basically intimate that they had a very close relationship.
Right,
We're not told, obviously, exactly the closeness, but even with, if you put it together, the way that we've seen Tane in the past act around Garrick and now, plus the Mila implication. I mean, she's a older woman, very fond of Elam, and something about the way that she talked to him, I would have believed that she was his mother.
yes,
And
yeah,
so yeah, I could see that. I mean, and the way that Garrick describes her, she's Tane's longtime maid and confidant. For
right.
a spy master has a longtime maid and
For 30
confidant, really?
years,
Right.
yeah, but
Something else is going on here
yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
if we're to try and peel back this onion a little bit, we could say it's probably true that an Auburntane, even if he's not married to Mila, had a child with Mila, and that child is probably Garrick. And yeah, so at the end of this episode, when Garrick accepts Tane's offer to stay and like rejoin him, I won't forgive
Mhm.
you, but I will try to forget, is what Tane says about the betrayal you gave me. And I think Garrick says, I didn't betray you, at least not in my heart,
Mhm.
which is an interesting response. Like he admits that he did betray him, but he didn't feel like it was personal. Like what's going
Right.
on there? Um,
So we need to. I would love to know that story. Like, what is the betrayal? What
right,
is it? I mean, he says that if you hadn't betrayed me, you would have been one of the greats. So it's just like, what did he do to betray an and Tank? Because again, they're both spies, and you would think that in their line of work, some kind of double cross is probably inevitable.
right,
And for it to be at such a personal level that Tane is refusing to forgive this
right.
this thing, then I would just love to know what it is. Did he murder someone? And I feel like it's not murder. Like I think that's the thing we always jump to because in our view it's such a serious offense to commit. But I just don't feel that from their interaction. I don't think that he murdered someone or anything like that. I think he did something else that
Right.
I think he's the reason that Tane had to go into retirement.
Yeah, that seems to
Like,
be
yeah, like they
possible.
talk about it, and we
Well,
can clearly see that Tane wants to be back in charge. And Garrick says that Tane is directly responsible for his exile,
right,
but it wouldn't surprise me at all considering how we've seen the Cardassians react and how they're so into one-upping one another that in the same moment that Tane exiled Garrick, someone else came along and kicked out Tane.
right. And it's interesting because Garrick says that an Auburntane is the only leader of the Obsidian Order who ever lived to retire. So maybe that's exactly right. Maybe what Garrick did, that whole betrayal, but not in my heart, is yeah, he forced Tane to retire. But he was,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, you can either die or retire. And Garrick thought that retirement, I mean, at least you're still alive to make a comeback, right? As opposed to you're dead. And Tane is like, no, I want to go out like a man, go out like every other leader of the Obsidian Order. And if I can't defend myself, then that's on me, not you make some sort of play on my behalf that ends up with me having to whittle away my next 10 years
Right.
of my life.
And the humiliation of being the only member of the Obsidian Order to retire
Right,
versus die in the line of duty, which they again, it's it's an odd honorific from our standpoint, but yeah, there are so many people who committed to their jobs like that,
right,
especially those types of professions. We can imagine that there's this need to do it until you die. And
right.
so to be a person who was retired out
Hmm.
could be the thing that makes
Yeah.
it
Here's your
unforgivable.
severance package, Tane. Yeah, like
Yes.
that's more of an insult than someone like doing a hostile takeover or something.
Right,
Yeah.
and killing him.
Um,
Killing him in
yeah,
his sleep even, you
yeah,
know? So, yeah.
exactly. So
That's what I would like to think that it is, that whatever it was that Garrick did, It forced Tane to have to retire, but before Tane retired, he forced Garrick into exile,
Right.
and that's why Garrick is where he is.
And now, of course, the next question is when Auburn Tain offers Garrick the chance to rejoin him, is Garrick for they can't trust each other. Is an
Mm,
Auburn Tain just trying to keep Garrett close? Is he gonna, just relish the backstabbing at some point in the next episode? Is there gonna be a moment where an Auburn Tain says, "I'm so glad you stuck around because now this means I get to betray you even harder than you betrayed me." Like he just drives the knife home, or is Garrick gonna either have like a is he gonna turn out to be some sort of you know true, white heart, true hearted. Have some moment of like clarity where he turns on an Auburn for a second time. Is he gonna, have
mm.
a moment of moral crisis, or is he gonna try and backstab Tane before Tane can backstab him? Like, there's so many potential options for how their relationship could go, and having a nice, amicable, you know, renewal of their relationship does not seem possible at all. And so
Yeah.
something's got to give.
Well, and I think that's true. Even for us, like yeah, I'm sure there are things that we think about, like past relationships, professions, whatever, that when we look at them, nostalgically, we're like, oh, that was such a great job, or that was such a this was so wonderful. If I could ever
Right,
return to that, I would do so in a heartbeat. And that's what we kind of see with Garrick here. He jumps at the chance to be back working with Tane again. But
right,
I mean, there's a lot of time, and people grow and change whether they want to or want to acknowledge it or not. You change, and
right,
so going back into that, while at first may seem very fun and very exciting, and like you didn't miss a beat, there will come a point where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not that person. And I think that Garrick will have those kind of moments. We've seen him change um already, just in his dealings with Cisco and the rest, especially with Bashir, that I don't think that he totally has the desire to become a spy master again.
right. Yeah,
But that's just
that
me.
that's the
That's just me.
question. That's the question, though. Is that I mean, so let me put it this way: if we know that Garrick, if we know the rest of the show is already out, we know that Garrick is probably going to return to his role on Deep Space Nine, then we know
Doesn't.
that things are going to have to go a certain way. But if we're watching this for the first time without any knowledge of the future, yeah,
No,
this.
I'm not. So I'm just. I obviously I have watched the show a bunch. I
All right,
know
no, yeah,
what
yeah,
happened,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I'm not. In my opinion, I have not said anything that should tell you one way or another
Oh
what's
no,
getting
you
ready to
haven't, you
happen.
haven't,
Yeah.
you haven't. My point is that um my point is like just watching this for the first time.
Yeah.
Let me. Like, I know Worf will join the show at some point in the future. That gives me insights into okay, Worf on TNG and all the movies. Maybe something will happen there that puts him in a position where change is necessary. Whatever. My point though is that if you were watching this the first time, as you did when it was new and fresh
Oh,
and it was new, the episodes were just coming
when
out,
I can
this would have.
precisely remember what I was thinking when I watched this episode. I was pissed off at Garrick because he threw Odo under the bus, and Odo was now
Yes.
trapped. I was so upset, and I was just like, I can't believe. And after all the stuff that we know about Tane, he's going to shake his hand and go
Yeah.
back to working. And the other thing is, Garrick had annoyed me the whole episode, and in watching it again. I remembered some of the things that he
Annoyed
annoyed
you.
me, and
Yeah.
one of and so and that's another reason why, like, when you asked me, or when you said that, I remembered it so well because I was annoyed with him the whole episode. He kept saying things and doing things that were just frustrating, like when he talks about Bashir wolfing down his food, you know, and I was just like, yeah, like I knew people who ate like that, you know, and it didn't phase me that much then, but even now watching it again, I was just like, yeah, there's still a lot of people who eat the way. And then, of course, there was the story of the boy who cried wolf, and
Yes. Oh,
the
great line.
answer
Great.
that he gave
Yes.
absolutely kills me every
Yes.
time because as
Yes.
many times as I've heard that fable, I had never thought of that
Yes.
until he said it in that
Right.
episode, and I remember the first time he said it, and me watching it going like, "Damn, that's I mean, it's perfect,
Yes, it's a
perfect."
great twisting of the.
So
We have to.
do
Yeah,
you
say
wanna
it.
say it? I was gonna do you
No,
want
you
me to do it?
you do it.
Okay.
It's your episode. You tell us
Alright.
the story he as he. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So this is shortly after the explosion, and Garrick is in sick bay, and he's getting fixed up by Dr. Bashir, and they've Cisco and uh, Odo have just left, and they had been asking him a bunch of questions and everything else, and he wasn't giving them any kind of answers and all that. Then they had left, and so then Garrick is talking with Bashir, and he's like, "It's so frustrating that no one believes me, even when I'm telling the truth." And so Bashir says, "Do you know the story of the boy who cried wolf?" And he's like, "No." And so Bashir then begins to tell him the story of the boy who, he's guarding the sheep and he's bored out in the field guarding the sheep. So he starts yelling for a wolf so that the people come out and they, are with him and everything. So he's not bored and lonely. And of course, there is no wolf. So he tells the people that he frightened the wolf away and they celebrate him for his heroism
Right.
and bravery. And Garrick says, "Oh, clever lad, what else?" And Bashir's like, "I'm not done." And so then he tells them, "Yeah, the boy did this the next day and the next day and the next day until finally people just weren't showing up." And so then one day a wolf really did show. And as much as the boy screamed and hollered about the wolf, no one came to help him. And the wolf ate the boy and the flock.
Yeah.
And Garrick was like, "That's a horrible story to tell children," and and he's right. And
Yeah.
Bashir was like, "What the point of the story is that if you lie all the time, no one will believe you, even when you're telling the truth." And
Right.
Garrick's like, "Are you
That's
sure
smart.
that's the point of that story, Doctor?" And he's like, "Yes. What else could it be?" And real quick, Garrick's like, "But you should never tell the same lie twice." And turns around and walks out. And damn it if it doesn't make perfect sense.
It does. It's a great
Ah,
moment. You're like, he's got a point. It's not that the
you
boy wasn't twisting his story around a little bit. It's that
no.
he used the one lie out. He wore it
Yes,
out.
he wore it out. He told it over and over and over again, and they stopped showing up. And I mean, it's perfect, but like I hated it so much because I remember hearing that story as a kid.
Mm-hmm,
And it's
mm-hmm.
a lesson about always telling the truth and only shouting during an emergency and all these things,
Right.
but never once did anybody ever say anything remotely close to that until this damn Cardassian
Right.
comes into my life and says it,
Yeah.
and I can't think of anything else.
It's like this episode, because of that very moment, is something you should never show children, because as soon as
Right,
they hear it, they'll be like, "That's right."
right. Now they learned. Now
Yeah.
valuable
Just got to be a
lesson.
little more inventive with my lies every time. Yeah.
And then
Oh,
something else
goodness.
Garrick says later on when the in the scene where when when Odo confronts him about legitimately not knowing who is trying to kill him. And
Uh-huh.
Cisco's like, "How do you know that he doesn't know?" And he's like, "Because if he knew, he would be spinning you all these conjectures and stories and lies and everything else." And Garrick says, "Well, I always figured that telling the truth was for something along the lines of a person who has a
It
severe
doesn't
lack
know
of
imagine.
imagination."
That's exactly right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's perfect, and it's just like the man has absolutely no guilt,
Yeah,
no remorse for drawing people into
and
what
quips
he's
for everything. Yeah.
yes, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Garrick, I
Yeah,
mean, this episode really kind of is the Garrick episode in a lot of ways. I mean, we've
yeah,
had Garrick central in episodes before. Like the previous time I can imagine was when, Bashir had to pull out the implant that like numbed painful sensations, which was supposed to be originally an anti-torture device. If you ever got tortured, this would prevent you from feeling it. And it stopped working and it started doing the opposite. It was actually causing him pain now. Um,
mhm.
but it's Garrick is usually not like the main focus. He's a focus, but usually there's one of our other main cast who is the focus, and it's always usually with Bashir. I was actually very happy when it turned into an Odo Garrick episode. I was like, yeah, Bashir has worked with Garrick enough times that it's good to have someone else be the other character to work with him.
And it's a profound credit to both Renee and Andrew Robinson that they work so well together.
Right.
And I don't know if it's just my extreme like of Odo and Renee Auberjonois. I don't know, but I swear that the man could be in a scene with just about anybody, and it
Well,
works. He does so well,
Well, what's so
you
great about
know.
this episode, I think, in part, is he actually turns into a detective this episode. He figures stuff out. He nails Garrick to the wall several times with the whole
Hmm.
line about, yeah, he doesn't know what the truth is because if he did know, he would be trying to say something. He's the one who figures out that Garrick blew up his
Blew
own
up his own
shop.
shop.
And he
Hmm.
did it because the guy who was after him, he recognized was coming to kill him. But that guy does poison, not the other way around. This and the blowing up of his shop got Odo involved because if he had went to Odo and said, "There's an assassin after me," Odo wouldn't have taken him seriously. But blowing up his shop got Odo invested in the story of, oh, he's trying to be assassinated. I got to figure out what the truth is. And Odo figures all of this stuff out, and it's great because Odo, he's been a detective before, but never in such a Sherlockian, that was what we thought the truth was, but it turns out the truth is actually something
Yeah.
else. Um,
And
turning
those are
things.
definitely the moments when Odo shines, when we get to see him. I
Yes.
mean, that's even a callback to, our season one noir
Hmm.
episode that we talked about
Oh
so much,
yeah,
and Odo was, I mean,
yeah.
he was so great in it. And then we get to see that again. And it's a great credit to everybody across the board, the actors, the directors, the writers. They really nailed this character and communicate these aspects of him so well. But he works in these scenes. So he's got his clandestine meeting with his shadowy informant, who we only
Yes.
get to see the eyes of. He's
Yes,
got
which
those kind
makes
of
me want to
connections.
ask so many questions like, "Oh goodness, who is
Yeah,
this person?"
who is it?
Oh,
And that
yeah,
guy's voice, like it's. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, to this day, I don't know who that is, but I
mhm,
know that he has been in other Star Trek stuff before. I would have to do like my own, like I guess, personal deep dive and just like
right.
watch and listen. I mean, I guess I could do the easy thing of looking it up, but I don't want to
Well,
look it up.
I
I
can do it
want to
right now. I have the
see.
name
See,
right in
you're a
front of me.
cheater.
Well,
You're a
I mean, I'm
cheater.
on Wikipedia. I was gonna say there's another reason I'm gonna talk about this, but if you
Oh,
don't
okay.
want to
Well,
know,
no, no. Go ahead. I will.
well,
I will still go back and do it anyway. But go ahead. Who
well,
is
my
he?
my point is not who he is, but why I was looking at the cast list because it turns out the director of this episode was Avery Brooks.
Yes.
So
Yes.
not you were just saying that like the directors and the writers did a great job. Well, in part, it was Avery Brooks who
Avery
was
Brooks. Of
directing this
course.
episode.
Should have
Um,
known. Should have known.
but yeah, the actor who did this, I'm not gonna say his name if you don't want to know, but I don't. He did do other Star Trek stuff, so you are
I know
right.
that he did because I know because
Yes,
I that voice was enough for me that I know I should have probably already looked it up or whatever, but I know I've heard him in
yeah,
other treks before. I think he's in Voyager as
yep,
something. I think his voice is in Voyager at least, and I don't
yes.
know about Next Gener.
He was in Voyager, Enterprise, and I guess the movie is Insurrection. The movie
Okay,
Insurrection. Again, I'm not going to say any details if you want to find out for yourself. But
so
yeah,
wait,
you're
okay,
right.
so he was in
He's
Voyager, Enterprise. Okay, so yeah, I knew the Voyager one. I'm not sure about
yes.
the Enterprise one because I don't know. I have to think about it, but I bet I
It
could
looks
place
like
him.
he's just done one episode appearances in those. But
Okay.
um, yeah, actually, it looks like this guy also makes another appearance in another season of Deep Space Nine. Again, I won't go into any details, but he's
Okay.
going to reappear. I don't know if it's the same character or what, but we're going to see him next season. It looks like if I'm
Okay.
getting my timeline correct here by looking at
Okay.
this. But
Well,
yeah,
okay. So I was gonna say I know that I've heard him before.
mm,
I just couldn't place exactly where, but I mean, hey,
right,
um, but yeah, he delivers so well, even for the brief bit of him that we get in
right,
this episode. So, but again, it all just goes back to Odo being a fantastic character,
right.
played expertly by Renee, and
Hmm.
he just he does his scene so well. I love the scene where it's Garrick and Tane and Odo, and Odo is just like totally disinterested in them, and they're doing their little banter back and forth, and even calls him on it. He's like, "You guys go through such great lengths to hide what you mean that you
Right.
end up saying nothing." and he's so bored with them and kind of annoyed.
Right.
And Tane's like, yeah, he's good. He hides his feelings very well, you know. It's like he does, and that also, you know, is something that Garrick tried to call Odo out on when they were in the shuttle, and he was talking about when Odo was kind of laying into him about the importance that Anabran had to Garrick, and then Garrick turned it around on him a little bit, and he was just like, you know, you act like we're just people that you study, that you're above us or whatever, but you're assigning a lot of emotions and connections to my stuff with Tane, but you don't have any of that. Or
Right.
do you? Is there
Mm.
someone that you're particularly fond of, close to, whatever,
Yeah.
trying to get out of him? And of course, now we all know who it
Yes.
is.
Right.
But Odo, he plays it so well. He's like, there's no change in his facial expression, nothing. And then even as
Right.
Garrick is just right up in his face, he tells him, you know, he's like, if there were, I certainly
We
wouldn't tell
wouldn't tell you.
you. And it's
Yes.
like,
Great moment.
yes,
And
it's
I love that
great.
scene too. I'm glad you brought it up because I love how Garrick, as soon as he's done kind of being intimidating, kind of snake like, getting in his face, as soon as he's done doing all that, he pops back up with his big fake smile and he's like, hey, I forget what he says, but he like
He says
walks off.
that would be a wise decision, is what he
Right.
says.
Yeah, he immediately goes back into, oh, I'm just a harmless little old tailor. I ain't got nothing to worry about. Don't worry about me. Yeah, it's Garrick is hilarious like that. Um, yeah, this episode had a lot to give us. I
Yeah,
feel like it's been a little bit since we've gotten some of these higher notes. O'Brien, I don't remember O'Brien really being in this episode. Dax was
he's
not
in it.
making it much.
He's in it a little bit. He's there when they were doing the initial investigation after the shot
Right.
blows up, and he comes back when he tells Odo that he input the tracking device in the Flaxian ship,
That's
which
right.
of course we then see blows up. But yeah, we don't see him after that. And
Right.
then Dax is only in the one wardroom scene, and
Right.
I think she only even has like one line in that scene, so really nothing much there. And
Right.
then Kira has an interesting scene in the beginning with
Bashir,
Bashir
as
talking
they're
about
gonna
they've
host.
got some delegates that are coming in, and apparently whatever the delegates breathe has eroded the carpet in
Yes,
the
and
guest
we'll have to
quarters.
pull the carpet out. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it. We don't see Quark, we don't see Rom, we don't see Jake. You know, a lot of
Yes.
our secondary characters, I guess, are
Right.
not in this, but that's fine
Right.
because we have such a great story
Mm,
that involves a lot of our other key characters here.
right.
And we're gonna, you know, we know it's a two-parter, so there's opportunities there for other things. But again, this episode to me really just kind of highlights the greatness of serialized storytelling that we did not have on TV shows in the 90s at all. Everything was either like a cop procedural or a doctor procedural or whatever, and they were very much, you know, bottle episodes. There was very little that bled over into the next episode, whereas that wasn't a soap opera anyway.
Right.
Whereas with this show, especially coming from Next Generation, we have tie-ins from several different episodes to get us just here. And
Right.
this is what I was talking about. This is the exciting part of the show to me because we had to get through season one, season two, and now here we are towards the end of season three, and it's building to so much stuff. And everything, like I said last week, everything that we're watching now in some way ties into everything else that's getting ready to happen in the next in the rest of the seasons, 4, 5, 6, 7, all of them. It all kind of starts here. They're laying that foundation here, and that's why I wanted to point out all that stuff about the Defiant going to the Orias sector under Thomas Riker's command. That's exactly the sector that Enabran Tain references in this episode. He says, we've been
Yeah.
building ships in the Orias sector for months now. That's exactly what he says.
Right.
Great callback. We know that they're doing
Yes.
it because why? Because the Defiant found because Cisco made contact with the Dominion and the Odyssey was blown up.
Right.
We like all of these notes here are finally coming together, and we're
Right.
getting ready to see that major movement, and
Right.
it's fantastic.
Yes.
Cannot wait for season four. Like there's some great things to come in these last parts of season three. Don't get me wrong,
Right.
but season four it has a great start, fantastic start. In fact, I
Gotcha.
think we're going to do something special for our when we finally get there
Mm,
for season four.
okay.
Uh, do something special for us, for our. people watching, listening, whatever it is, maybe have something great for you for that because I love these next bits.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah, I it's been I had been thinking about the whole Cardassian sector that we had seen in that one episode. I had mentioned in my
Hmm.
in when I was talking earlier at the beginning of the episode. But yeah, it is great to see all these plot lines tie together. Again, my favorite show in terms of like my favorite show for a long time was, and even some ways still is, Person of Interest. And Person of Interest definitely does some of that, where in one episode this one character is introduced, and then or this one plot line is introduced, and it's much later when we get the payoff. And that's part of the reason why I love shows like that is you have the real potential to like lay kind of Easter eggy type stuff that builds on itself in the show, and that's really fun. But the one other thing I think we haven't yet talked about, which I thought was a lot of fun, in terms of the whole Garrick, uh, who Garrick is, we start with him eating, dinner with Bashir, and he's complaining about Julius Caesar in Shakespeare's Caesar,
Yes.
and how Caesar was an idiot to not expect that he was going to be backstabbed. Like his
Yeah.
Garrick's outlook on life is, of course, he was going to be backstabbed. Of course, he has to look, watch his own back, because that's how life is. Like, how
That's how it's supposed to be. Right.
exactly? It's
He I
not even
believe he even says at one point, he was like, you want me to believe that Julius Caesar was this great military leader and tactician, and yet he couldn't see what was going on right under his own nose.
Bashir's
Like,
like, that's why it's
man.
a tragedy, and the Garrick's like, it's not a tragedy. It's just a story of a moron.
Right. He's like, he's stupid. Right. That's what he said. He's not, yeah, not a tragedy. He's just dumb. Like, he's like, he said, I knew Brutus was gonna stab him in the back in the first act. And
Right,
I've gone back and read that and I don't see it. So I don't know
right.
what it is that I'm missing that he noticed, but I've tried
Yeah,
to see it and I'm just like,
I
I
I
don't see it.
personally like to think that it's just part of their banter about, what's wrong with your culture's version of storytelling. Bashir critiques, the Cardassians by, yeah, it turns out your murder mysteries aren't any fun because everyone's guilty. It's not who's done it. It's what's their reason for why they're
Right.
guilty.
It's a long, intricate, drawn out story about why they're guilty. What was it
Yeah,
called? The never ending sacrifice. He's like, yeah,
yeah,
because he's like, all of your stories end the same. Everybody's guilty, and it's just this long, steady march until someone dies and the next family member takes their place. It's like, yes. He's like, and it's beautiful. And it's like, and now it's boring.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's great. I love the idea that these two guys. It makes sense if two cultures met. I mean, even on Earth, when two cultures meet, there's a lot of clash between worldviews and all sorts of stuff. But the idea that alien species would have massive ways of massively different ways of looking at life than we would. This is a great, fun way to examine how that might go.
and of course they would. Of course they would. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just like it's so obvious, and that's one thing that I love episodes like this for, highlighting the fact that they are different. Next Generation, for all of its showing of different aliens and so forth, they often have a particular fondness for human culture and human literature and know certain things about human life that to me never really made any sense. Like, there's a couple episodes where Sarek comes on board and they're playing music and stuff, and his favorite music to hear is Mozart. Why? Why would
Mhm.
Mozart be his favorite? Now, they can make all their in-universe reasons for it or whatever. Of course, we know that there was nothing else. They had to say something, right?
Right. Hmm.
But it just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. And I like that we've gradually moved away from that, and they've given us other examples
Right.
of different alien cultures and their forms of entertainment and food and so forth. And
Right.
if there's one thing that we can really enjoy the newer Trek shows for, in particular Discovery, they do a lot of that. They showcase other races, and their, at least in their cultures and so forth, and their differences from humanity. They do that a lot, and they do it very
Hmm.
well. And so
Right.
I appreciate that more than almost anything else, because it gets boring when for some reason, Klingons are quoting Shakespeare, Vulcans are, or what's next? Vulcan singing Beyonce. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like,
Yes.
they
Yeah.
should have different cultural references, like we have things that we
Yes.
would pull up from
Right.
hundreds of years ago. Why
Right.
wouldn't they? Why did all
Right.
that go away the moment that they made contact with humanity?
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, guys,
And
we're not that great. Like,
yeah.
we're
Well,
just not.
it's a great example though of like how hard it would be to make a different culture and come up with different lines, which is why the whole wolf, the boy who cried wolf, like the Cardassian version of why you don't cry wolf is Garrick's version. It's not
Yes.
because you're telling lies, it's because you got to change up your lies, bro.
Gotta spice it up, man. You want those accolades to keep coming, you gotta tell a bigger and better and bolder lie next
Yeah,
time, man.
exactly. Yeah, it's not about yeah. So I
We're not gonna
love the
keep coming around for this wolf nonsense. Next time, I
yeah.
mean, throw in a bear or something, like,
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's actually a great testimony to how Deep Space Nine has kind of found a way around this whole problem of yeah, why is it that we're always quoting Shakespeare? Well, Garrick doesn't quote Shakespeare; he critiques it
yeah.
and offers his own alternate versions of storytelling, and yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's more interesting than, as you said, listening to Mozart. Mozart's lovely, but can we hear some
Come on.
Vulcan music and
I
maybe why they enjoy
I
it?
for one would love that. I would love it if, when they went into, a human's quarters, we have our intimate moment or whatever, right? And we're going into, let's just say that they did a Next Generation reboot. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a scene in the Next Generation early on, season 1. Riker is enjoying some music in his quarters, and it's these small hollow projections of these two women dressed like, um, ancient Greek whatever's, and they're playing harps, right?
Right,
Boring. And to me, it was like, that doesn't seem like the type of music that Riker would listen to relax at all, but whatever.
right.
But if they were to do a reboot and they were to reshoot that particular scene, I would love for us to be in his quarters and he was rocking out to, I don't know, Ferengi trance music or
I
something.
want Jake to rock out to some music. Jake should be the
Uh,
one who's rocking out to some like, yeah, he's got some Klingon hardcore, like not the opera
right.
stuff that Dax listens to, which is great. Another example of a good example of mixing it
That's
up. But
right. I
like,
forgot
oh,
about that.
let's
They
get
brought
some
in Klingon opera.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's get some Klingon like hard metal or something, and
Like,
Jake's
right, like
going,
Klingon death metal. What does that
yeah,
sound like? I would, yeah,
exactly.
love to know
Yeah.
if they have a version of that.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure. I'm
yeah,
sure.
anything like that, or like ancient Vulcan dance songs or something. I don't know.
Right.
Just anything that would be different, and just you can make it be anything. Make it be,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm just want to just hypothesize something. Like, let's have a dance, but it's not a dance where it's like the men and women dance together. They partner up. It's like two men partner up, but it's like a competition dance. It's a dance off,
a
but
dance off.
it's a dance off, but it's not like the one person goes and one person goes. It's like they're both doing the same dance, like mirroring each other. And like the whole idea is like whoever performs it better is like the winner kind of thing. Like that's how Klingons do it. It's not about like you know
Oh, so the one aspect of Klingon culture where they don't beat the hell out of each other is when they dance?
yeah, it's something. I don't know. I'm just proposing
That
something. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just saying that would be a fantastic take where everything else involves ritual bloodletting to some regard. Here is
right,
the one thing that doesn't.
right.
The
Well,
one thing is
as
when
you
they
say
hit the
it, it
dance
makes me
floor.
like, okay, maybe I should propose it as being like a Cardassian version of dancing. But you get my
I
point. Like,
mean, but
yeah,
still, I think it could work. I think it would be hilarious, not hilarious. Well, yes, it would be hilarious to see a bunch of Klingons dancing. But at the same time, like considering everything else you know about their culture, to see them act this way for this one thing would be great. Like a
right,
great way to, fully round out the culture. Don't make them so one dimensional. Here is something else that adds a layer to them.
right, right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway, I think we strayed a little bit from our
Oh
from our
well.
topic here, but that's okay. That's okay. We're good.
Yeah.
Um, Final thoughts on this episode and any projections or yeah, predictions for the second part.
Oh, I guess I really gave out most of them at the beginning of like this could very, very, very quickly fall apart on the Cardassians and the Romulans. And if our group of heroes from the Federation, Cisco and the others, are supposed to be our main cast, we have to imagine that something's going to happen that involves them. They have to do something, whether it's rescue operations or they're the base, the fallback base where everyone comes to as they're trying to escape being routed by the Dominion. Something.
Yeah.
They're going to be central to whatever happens next episode, and I look forward to it. Hopefully, Odo can escape and or Garrick will let him go. I don't know. Something will happen where Garrick is like, I like, for example, I imagine Garrick will be like, of course he wasn't going to let me go. If I ever got on the runabout, he would immediately shot it out of the air. It's probably rigged already. There's no way he was
Yeah.
going to let me go. I didn't for one moment believe that was the case. I had to accept his offer. That was the only option I had, whether he might pretend otherwise or not. Something. There's a lot of options we can go down, a lot of storytelling that they've set up, and I look forward to finding out how they play it out.
Okay. Well, of course, you'll have to just wait until next week to tune in to see if anything that David predicted was correct. Before that, I always like to give a little new Trek update, of course. Pretty much all new Trek is over with, all their seasons have ended. We are eagerly awaiting for the third and final season of Star Trek Picard to come out. They've officially announced the release date of that will be February 16th, 2023. So, of course, if you don't have it already, go ahead, sign up for Paramount Plus so that you can get caught up and be ready to watch the
Mhm.
third season by then.
Right.
Um, there has been talk that a long awaited um, new Star Trek movie is back in production. However, they're very tight-lipped as to what it's about, who's directing it, and even who's in it. I mean, we know it's gonna still be focused on the original series cast, or at least those reboot characters anyway. But we don't know anything else about the story, the timeline, any of that stuff. There were several ideas that had been pushed out a long time ago, but nothing that says that they're going with any of them. So that could just be, you know, nothing. They could be doing something all new. But I guess the most up to date thing would be, of course, waiting for Picard. They have released a lot of new images and stuff for that. Worf looks great. Can't wait to see him kicking butt here in a few weeks. Really, like what is it, like 20 days? I think
Mhm.
But yeah, that's about it. And as always, you can listen to us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. I happen to do it on Spotify. You can catch us every week also on our YouTube channel by the same name. Again, the Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. Until next week, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.